Hello everybody, Sniping is Fun here, and I welcome you all back to my next top 10 list I'm going to present to all of you here on YouTube. This list, just like my Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite list, is going to be split into two separate lists. When it came to that list, like I mentioned in those videos, I thought it was best to separate the Marvel list and the Capcom list so I didn't have them interloping with each other and representing Marvel a little more than Capcom, or Capcom a little more than Marvel, actually. You know, I wanted to give each component, each part of that game, its own definitive top 10 list. And when it came to a topic here, it was best suited, I think, to do pretty much the same darn thing. What's the topic for these two top 10 lists? It's going to be the Nintendo Switch. The next generation Nintendo console handheld thing that we're going to be seeing the first bits of information. Actually, in a couple weeks. It's actually kind of funny, like about 2 weeks, I think we're going to see our first bits of information early 2017 in January. And then the console is supposed to be releasing 2 months from then in March of next year. And we still don't know too much of anything about it, especially games outside of, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Elder Scrolls is supposed to be on it, and so on and so forth. There's a Mario, and whatever the heck else. We really don't know games, especially above almost everything else. All these rumors keep coming out. Everything keeps basically being said about this system, from games to whatever in terms of rumors, but nothing concrete has been released yet, and Nintendo has been holding their mouth, holding their tongue for like the longest freaking time, and we won't know until like January. But people have been speculating, people have been doing rumors, people have been talking and thinking stuff over, especially in terms of games. And you know what? I want to do the same thing too. So in this top 10 list, I'm going to be talking about my top 10 games that need to be on the Nintendo Switch. And I split it off into two separate lists. I did my top 10, which is this, again, part one of this list, my top 10 Nintendo franchises that need to be on Nintendo Switch. Need to be. It's not a question if they should or not. They need to be, and I feel they should be. And then there's also going to be a top 10 list of my top 10 third-party games / franchises that I feel need to be, should be on Nintendo Switch as well. That list is going to come later. This right here is going to be the Nintendo franchises. And this is going to be part one, like usual I've done lately, separating the parts, numbers 10 through 6. And then we'll get on to part 2 with 5 through 1 with all the honorable mentions. So before this intro gets a little too long, I want to get this list started so you can all enjoy it, and we can see what games I feel, what Nintendo franchises I feel should be on a Nintendo Switch. Let's start. Number 10. Number 10 goes to Murasame Castle. And this franchise really only has one game, and it came out back on the Famicom. It never got released here back in the day. It was never localized. And we finally now, with the Wii U and whatnot, got a localized import game of it on the Virtual Console on the eShop. And it's basically the Legend of Zelda, but with feudal Japan, samurais, and all this Japanese history type stuff. It's basically made, I believe, also by the same. It was made by the same team as the team that made The Legend of Zelda as well, or at least certain people inside that team. And it's basically a top-down, world walking through and killing enemies and beating the level type thing, kind of like what Legend of Zelda was, like an over-the-top adventure type game where you play as Takamaru, the same Takamaru that everyone's asking for in the Smash Bros. Franchise, and you are a samurai going on about your business, doing your quest to save Japan and whatnot. And since this game was made back then, it's been referenced in stuff like Captain Rainbow, and obviously Takamaru is an assist trophy in Smash Bros. 4. He was one of the extra characters in Samurai Warriors 3 on the Wii. And they've always referenced it. They came so close to doing little cameos and references and whatnot, but since that game on the Famicom back in the 80s, Murasame Castle has not gotten a single game since then. And I feel it's time to bring this franchise back. Like, every now and then it feels like Nintendo brings franchises back. They out of the blue we get like a reboot of a franchise, or the franchise came back after being gone so long. Star Fox was gone so long, they brought back Star Fox Zero. You had Punch-Out, which wasn't seen since the Super Nintendo, and it came back on the Wii. You know, stuff like that. And Nintendo does stuff like that, and they should continue to do that with a lot of their franchises, because there's a lot of franchises that never made it past the Famicom and the original Nintendo, or the Super Famicom Super Nintendo. They've never made it out of 2D games, or they might have barely made it into N64. You know, there's a lot of franchises Nintendo has pretty much forgotten about, and this is one of them, and it's pretty cool. You know, you get some cool Japanese history in there, throw in some, you know, cool, you know, Japanese history stuff and mystical creatures and stuff like that, and a big fantasy element. You can make it a very action-oriented hack-and-slash adventure-style game. You don't have to go in the route of Zelda, really. You can go super beat-em-up, like action-adventure, hack-and-slash, like a Bayonetta or something, like a Bayonetta, Devil May Cry type game. I've seen people recommend that for this. So anything can be done, because this is a franchise that there's so much potential for, and Nintendo has done nothing with it. And I think now with the Nintendo Switch, they can innovate it, bring the franchise back like they brought Punch-Out or Star Fox or some, you know, all those other franchises back, Kid Icarus, and do something new and unique with it. That's my number 10. Here is my number 9. Wario Land, because Wario Land is one of their classic, you know, their classic 2D platforming games. Like, Wario Land's been around since the Game Boy. It was the successor to, you know, Super Mario Land, like villain, Super Mario Land 2, 6 gold coins, and like Wario was the villain in that game. Then they started giving Wario the Land franchise, and he became like, you know, they had Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance games. It had Wario World, I believe, yeah, that was the name of it. Wario World on the GameCube, and then Wario, you know, Land, Shake It, or Shake Dimension, or whatever you want to call it, on the Wii. And it hasn't been seen since then. And it was the original Wario franchise. WarioWare, I know, is the major Wario franchise now, and we're obviously more than likely 99% going to get a WarioWare on the Switch. It's pretty much freaking guaranteed. Like, every system since the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube have had a Wario, you know, Ware, but we've only sparingly had Wario Land so often. It's a fun platforming game. It's so different than Mario, and it's always Mario this and Mario that, but this is another one of their 2D platforming franchise from Nintendo, a spin-off to the Mario franchise. It's unique and different enough to be there alongside Mario, and I believe Wario deserves more representation than just the little mini game thing, micro game stuff from the WarioWare franchise. And they keep his classic costume in Smash Bros., so why can't we continue to get continued versions of that franchise, the Wario Land franchise as well? And you can bring all these, you know, characters like, you know, Captain Syrup and her pirates, and all these different characters and villains and stuff that have shown up in the series. Maybe you can integrate Waluigi in it. You know, there's so much unique stuff you could do, and now with the Switch being like on the go type of thing, and, you know, on the TV, you know, how it's technically both. Wario Land was a franchise that was both handheld and console. You could probably do some unique features with that. So, a fun game, and it's a franchise that I've seen people recommend, and I personally would like to see it too. Like, I'm a fan of the franchise. I remember playing the original game with my cousin Erica, and I remember playing the Wii one, which was pretty fun, and I think I played one or two in the middle, and it's just a fun franchise that I feel Nintendo needs to, you know, give Wario some more recognition than he gets, because he hasn't gotten a whole lot of recognition a whole lot lately, and he really does deserve it. That's my number 9. I'm messing up here, I'm sorry. My number 8 is going to be... My number 8 is going to be... Elite Beat Agent / ON Dan. You can do a mix of both, because it's, I mean, I would love to just see the two franchises connect, and all like the Japanese cheerleaders with the Elite Beat Agents, and just mix the game together all you want. But this game franchise, I'm gonna just reference ON Dan here as well. Basically, this rhythm franchise started on the DS. It was so popular in Japan, you know, and people localized it, or so they've always imported the game. It was never, the ON Dan games were never localized, and it was so imported, as far as I remember hearing, that they decided to make an American version of it with, you know, American, you know, Western music and Elite Beat Agents. It was such a fun rhythm game. It was so wacky, unique, different, and cool, and the music choices they got, for the most part, were pretty cool, and the story of them just going out and, oh, help, and all these agents come down and just solve people's problems by dancing and music and doing rhythm stuff. It was cool. It was unique and different. And we have not seen a new Elite Beat Agents since that game. That game came out in 2006. It's been 10 years. But there was another ON game in Japan, but we only ever got one Elite Beat Agents. There's 3 games in the series, and only one of them we ever got. So why don't you bring it back, just bring them together, make a version that's both, you know, Japanese and Western, and just mix it together with the ON cheerleaders, the Elite Beat Agents, and just have music that's maybe Japanese and Western, just mix it together and make a fun, unique game. I know, supposedly, as far as we know, that the controller, the screen on the Switch doesn't have, you know, touchscreen or anything, supposedly, but you always could do button presses or stuff like that. They did stuff like that with Hatsune Miku on the PS, you know, 3 and whatnot. They've done stuff like they've done rhythm games that you do not have to touch the screen. Parappa the Rapper, Unjammer Lammy, like I said, Hatsune Miku. And if there is a touchscreen, you could do that too, or you can include both features so, you know, gamers can have a choice. But it is a franchise that it had a spark. It was unique and different. And it was one of their newer franchises at the time. It was a new IP from Nintendo at the time. And it hasn't been seen in years. Bring it back on the Switch. Bring it back. Give it life. Make it, you know, live again. Make it be. You know, come on. The franchise needs help. That's my number 8. My number 7 is going to be Star Tropics, another franchise that's like what I mentioned with Murasame Castle, another classic franchise that Nintendo seems to have forgotten about, and it really was an interesting like adventure game back in the day. They had 2 of them on the NES, and you know, a cool character like Mike Jones, as cool as he could be, with a wacky character who sticks bananas in his ears and fights people with a bat and a yo-yo. You know, just this wacky like adventure game that this franchise that had such an interesting premise, interesting characters and story, and it was kind of, you know, unique for its time, and it is almost a cult classic. A lot of people look back on that franchise and like it, especially the first one. And it's another franchise, like I mentioned before, that Nintendo has forgotten about, and I don't know why. And people keep requesting, like, you know, Mike Jones be like in Smash Brothers. So if they're requesting him for that, and people do want to see a return to the franchise, I don't see why in the world they don't do that. You know? And it's like, it's another revival. Like I mentioned with the Murasame Castle thing, Nintendo revives franchises at random. I don't know how they even remotely decide how they do that, because, you know, you have all these franchises, and they seem to forget about them, and then out of the blue, they bring them back. Like I mentioned, Kid Icarus, Star Fox, and like Pikmin to some extent, and Punch Out. You know, they like a lot of the NES and Famicom, Super Nintendo franchises that they've made back then. A lot of them never made it past that. This is one you can make an interesting, unique, different style adventure game that's not Zelda. Just like Murasame Castle. Murasame Castle would be very Japanese-based. This would be very wacky, fantasy, Western heroes, you know, world-based. It wouldn't have to be like, you know, the realm of like a Zelda fantasy-style game. It could be something different. And like I mentioned, how Murasame Castle could be super hack and slash and super adventurous, like a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta. This could be maybe just a fun, wacky adventure game. It doesn't have to be really. It doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be anything. It just has to be fun and wacky and, you know, interesting. The world itself would be unique enough to bring back to the game. It's another franchise from Nintendo that I feel they really should be bringing back. And now we are at number 6, and the final number on my part 1 of this list. The first half of this top 10 Nintendo franchises for the Switch list. And I'm going to end part 1 with number 6 with 1080 Snowboarding, because man, that franchise was really fun. It was such a fun franchise. It's only had over two games, and both of them were excellent. Like the original on the N64 was a fun snowboarding game for its time, and it was back at the time competing with the likes of like Cool Borders and whatnot. And then you have 1080 Avalanche on the GameCube, and it got kind of an SSX style approach to it. It got a little more arcadey or so, while the original was a lot more, you know, simulation kind of style. And it was never too serious, but it was never too wacky like in 1080 Avalanche as well. it was never. It was kind of like a nice balance where it's kind of simulation, but kind of also super like fun, wacky snowboarding game. And it's a franchise like Nintendo has all these sports franchises, and they don't seem to do anything with them. It makes no sense. They have 1080 snowboarding, and they don't do anything with it. But there are fans of the franchise that like Ricky Winterborn and all this crazy. Like they like snowboarding. Snowboarding's still popular. People still snowboard. People still do it in the X Games and do it on like sports style stuff like that. It may not be the days of like Sean Palmer or anything, or even Shaun White, but snowboarding is still popular. People still like to snowboard. The 1080 franchise was a beloved franchise, despite only having 2 games. And we haven't seen it since the GameCube, and that was... Avalanche was, I think, 2003, so it's been like 13 years since we've seen 1080 anything. It has all these wacky, unique, interesting this cast of characters that were so unique, and you could expand upon that, add more characters to that, and just make it a crazier game with online play, which would pretty much bring a lot of gamers together. And a lot of people would like to see a big multiplayer approach to something like this. And maybe some customizing boards thing, or you can customize your character's outfit, or whatever. You can use, like, if there's a touchscreen or whatever, you could draw something. You can make your own designs for your clothes and your board. I don't know. It would be something unique. And the 1080, I like the franchise. It's not my favorite Nintendo franchise. And if you look back at my top 10 favorite Nintendo franchises of all time, top 10 list I did like a month or so back. I mean, it was on the list at some point. I forgot where, if it was honorable mention or it was lower on the list. I like it a lot. It's just not one of my favorite franchises, but it's something I really would like to see back. And it's been like 2 generations since we've seen it. So it's another Nintendo franchise we should see being brought back. And you're going to see in the second half of this, numbers 5 through 1, some more of those. Because, quite frankly, Nintendo seems to forget about a lot of their freaking franchises that a lot of fans actually like. and that's really about it. It's 1080 snowboarding. Nintendo, bring it back. And that's it for my part 1 of this top 10 Nintendo franchises that I feel need to be on the Nintendo Switch. I hope you guys like this video. Put in the comment section what you guys think. Do you want to see these games? Do you want, do you think they should? Do you feel these ones should be on there? What games do you want to see on there? Start putting in the comment section there. We can discuss it there and have fun. And please stay tuned for part 2 of this list, when I detail numbers 5 through 1 with all the honorable mentions, and we can discuss more there. And you can look at what the rest of my list is there. Hope you guys like this video. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to, and have a lovely day. See you all later.